The sky over Kavros 9 was on fire. Wolverine's dropship spiraled down like a wounded hawk, engines trailing smoke and sparks. Alarms blared inside the cockpit. Gravity slammed his body against the crash restraints. His armor creaked under the pressure. Outside, the rocky landscape rushed toward him, jagged and waiting like a set of broken teeth. Brace for impact, the ship's eye warned. 2 seconds too late. The ground hit with a deafening crack, metal groaning as the hull folded like paper. Darkness surged into his vision. Then silence. When Wolverine woke, the world was sideways and soaked in red emergency lights. He was upside down, one arm pinned beneath a twisted console. Smoke coiled around him like snakes. He gritted his teeth and forced his arm free with a growl, the pain sharp but manageable. He'd felt worse. He checked his suit's systems, power at 12%. Comms dead. No signal to Terran Command. No sign of his unit. Just a single red blinking message. Mission failure. He didn't have time to care. Outside the broken hull, a desert of black stone stretched in every direction. The wind howled low and cold, full of dust and something else, something humming beneath the surface, like this planet was more alive than it looked. Wolverine limped forward, rifle slung, instincts kicking in. The Kavrosi war zone wasn't new to him, but this place, it felt different. Abandoned. Forgotten. He found a crumbled structure nearby, half swallowed by the earth, an old Kavrosi bunker from the last war, its doors barely hanging on. Shelter. He shouldered inside, coughing through stale air and flickering lights. The place was ancient, built from a mix of metal and organic material. Kavrosi design, all smooth curves and glowing lines. He scanned for threats. None. Then movement. A soft shuffle echoed from deeper in the bunker. Wolverine raised his weapon, stepping quietly, ready to fire. And then he saw her. She stood in a narrow hallway, framed by a faint blue glow from the wall panels. Not a soldier, her posture was too calm. Her skin shimmered faintly, the color of moonlight over water. Her eyes, violet and sharp, locked on him without flinching. She wore a torn diplomatic uniform, dirt-streaked, and clinging to her like a memory of better days. "Kavrosi?" he asked, voice rough. She nodded, slow and cautious. "Half," she said. "And you're human, a Terran." Wolverine didn't lower his weapon. "You alone?" "Yes." She eyed the gun, unimpressed. "And if you're here, then something went very wrong up there." He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned against the wall as his knees buckled. The adrenaline was fading. Blood dripped down his side. He hadn't even noticed the gash. His stomach turned with hunger, exhaustion, and the brutal weight of failure. She took a step forward. "You won't last long like that." Wolverine gave a dry laugh, sinking to the floor. "Figured that out already." The lights flickered once. Then again. With a groan of metal, the bunker doors sealed behind them, locking shut. Neither of them moved. For a long moment, the silence stretched between them like a wire ready to snap. Then she knelt beside him, not afraid, not hostile, just tired. "I'm Lyra," she said quietly. He looked at her, eyes narrowing. "Wolverine." She raised an eyebrow. "That your name?" He smirked, even as his vision blurred. "It is now." The last thing he saw before blacking out was her hand reaching toward him, offering help in a place where none should exist. Wolverine woke again to the sharp sting of a slap. His eyelids flickered open, and the world swung back into focus. He was lying on the cold, smooth floor of the bunker, a faint, eerie hum vibrating through the walls. Lyra was crouched beside him, her face tight with concern. A small jar of something glowing in green sat next to her. She had the look of someone used to seeing wounded soldiers, yet something in her eyes told him she hadn't expected to see one quite like him. "You're awake," she said, her voice soft but firm. "And you need to eat." Wolverine blinked, trying to push himself up. His body felt like it had been run over by a herd of mechs. Eat what? Lyra smiled faintly, unperturbed by the question. She opened the jar and scooped out a viscous liquid, the green goo almost shimmering in the dim light. This, you'll need it to stay alive. He raised an eyebrow. What is that, exactly? Food. Her lips twitched. You really don't have a choice. He groaned, leaning back against the wall. His stomach growled in protest, but pride kicked in, louder than hunger. I'm not drinking, whatever that is. You can die from blood loss or dehydration if you want, she said flatly, holding the jar just out of reach. Your call. The challenge hung between them, a quiet war of wills. Wolverine stared at the jar. His ribs ached. His muscles felt like they were made of lead. She wasn't wrong. He was on the edge of collapse. But damn it, he wasn't going to lose face in front of an alien. Lyra wasn't watching him with judgment, though. More like curiosity. She gave a short laugh, like she'd read his mind. The last Terran soldier I saved was a lot more cooperative. Of course, he died anyway. But you're different. His jaw tightened, and he held her gaze. I'm not here to die. I'm here to stop an invasion. Her eyes flickered with something. Understanding, maybe, or simply the weight of their shared isolation. She didn't press him further. Instead, she took a deep breath, resigned to the reality that survival was an agreement. Slowly, she dipped a finger into the green goo and brought it to his lips. Wolverine didn't flinch this time. The first taste hit his tongue like a slap of cold water. It wasn't unpleasant, just odd. It wasn't like any food he'd ever had. There was a faint sweetness to it, but also a deep, earthy richness. And something else, something that made his insides stir with a warmth he hadn't realized he'd missed. She was watching him, still waiting. Well, he swallowed, grimacing a little but not from disgust. Not terrible. Lyra smirked. I told you. Wolverine couldn't help the dry chuckle that escaped his lips. Yeah, you were right. He took another sip. Guess it beats dying of thirst. They fell into a silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just a shared understanding that they were both trying to figure out what happened next. Wolverine wasn't used to depending on anyone, let alone an alien. He hated the idea, but she'd saved his life. Twice now. So, he said after a moment, his voice a little gruff, What's your story? Lyra leaned back against the wall, her eyes distant for a moment. My father was the Kavrosi ambassador to the Alliance. I was supposed to be on a diplomatic mission. But now that mission's dead. Kavros 9's under siege by your people. His eyes sharpened. That's not why I'm here. I know. Her lips twitched again. The problem is, neither of us is going anywhere until we figure out what really happened. Wolverine's head throbbed as the last of his strength started to return. You're right. We'll need to dig deeper. Good, she said, but we need to survive long enough to do it. So, eat. Wolverine took another spoonful, swallowing it down with less resistance this time. A moment of uneasy camaraderie passed between them as the food settled into his stomach. In the silence, they both knew the truth. Survival was the only thing that mattered now. They had no choice but to trust each other, for better or worse. Wolverine's body was starting to feel like his own again. Slower, but steadier. He tested his legs, gingerly pushing himself to his feet, the deep ache in his ribs easing with each cautious movement. The harsh light of the bunker flickered overhead, casting shadows across the worn metal walls. Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, tinkering with a small datapad she'd scavenged from the wreckage. All right, Wolverine grunted, brushing dirt off his armor. What's next? Lyra didn't look up, focused on the device. We wait. See if we can dig up something useful. I'll try to access the old communications network, if it's still active. Wolverine wasn't much for sitting still. He prowled the edges of the room, examining the scattered debris from the old war. Pieces of long-forgotten technology, alien markings faded over time, remnants of a conflict that still lingered in the air. The bunker felt like a tomb, silent, heavy with history. He glanced back at Lyra, who was still hunched over the datapad. She hadn't said much since their tense exchange over the strange green food, but there was something different in her demeanor now, a quiet resolve, a purpose that went beyond just survival. A thought nagged at him, but he pushed it away. He had bigger things to focus on. He was on a mission, after all. Lyra spoke again, her voice cutting through the silence. "You're still here, huh?" Wolverine's gaze shot to her. What's that supposed to mean? She glanced up at him, her violet eyes sharp and knowing. "You're a soldier. I can tell. Soldiers don't sit idle for long. I thought you'd be pacing around, getting ready to fight something." His lips curled into a half-smile. "What, you think I'm just here for a good time?" "Maybe," she said, deadpan. "Or maybe you're just waiting for the right moment to be useful." He didn't like that. It stung more than it should have. But there was truth in it, too. Before he could respond, the sound of the bunker's door locking down echoed through the hallways. The security system had engaged again. Wolverine reached for his rifle, instinct kicking in. Lyra didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly set the datapad aside, standing with surprising ease for someone who had spent the last few days cooped up in a collapsing bunker. "Something's coming," she said quietly. Wolverine nodded. He could feel it now, too. The weight in the air, the tension creeping down his spine. They waited in the dark, neither of them speaking. The sounds from outside grew louder, echoing in the thin corridors like a distant rumble of thunder. Then it hit, sudden and sharp, a blast of air from the vents, followed by a deep hum that felt like a pulse, vibrating through the walls. Wolverine's eyes narrowed as he tracked the noise, every muscle coiled and ready. But it wasn't what he expected. From around the corner, Lyra emerged, holding something in her hand. It was a strange device, sleek and pulsing with a faint glow. She didn't look at him, didn't say a word, but the expression on her face told him everything he needed to know. "It's time," she said softly, like a prayer. Wolverine wasn't sure if it was the machine or her words, but something in the room shifted. He'd fought countless battles, and most of them were brutal, messy things. Some were won, some lost. But this was different. Lyra stepped closer, offering him the device. It was a small tube, glowing faintly. He took it in his hand, and that's when she spoke again. "It's the only way we'll make it through. You're not going to like it, but you don't have a choice." He glanced at her, confusion spreading across his face. "What the hell are you talking about?" Lyra hesitated, then sighed. "It's my species, solution for nourishment in extreme situations. I can't really explain it, but it's the only thing that will keep us alive right now." Wolverine frowned. "So you're telling me?" Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. "I know it's not what you'd choose, but you need to trust me." He took another step back, his gaze fixed on the glowing tube. The pulse of desperation hit him again. There was no choice. With a deep breath, Wolverine swallowed his pride and nodded. "Do what you've got to do." Lyra met his eyes, and for a split second, there was understanding. No words needed, just the silent agreement that they were in this together, whether they liked it or not. And with that, the strange milk of her species would become their bond, something they both needed to survive in a world that offered no easy answers. The bunker trembled again, this time with more force. A low, grinding noise echoed through the walls, followed by the sharp screech of metal scraping metal. Wolverine's instincts flared. Something was coming. He turned to Lyra, who had already moved to a control panel, fingers flying across the dusty keys. Her face was set in concentration, her earlier calm replaced by something sharper. Desperation, maybe, or just the cold edge of someone who knew how to survive. "What is that?" Wolverine asked, his voice a low growl. The walls shuddered again. The room's lights flickered once, then twice, casting long shadows that danced across the steel floors. "Not sure," she replied, eyes scanning the screen. But it's not just a malfunction. Someone's reactivating the bunker's defenses. Wolverine's heart skipped a beat. They were deep in enemy territory, and he didn't need to be a genius to know what that meant. We need to move. Now. Lyra nodded, but she didn't pull away from the control panel. I'm trying to access the old systems. This place is full of secrets. If I can find out who's been messing with it. She didn't finish the sentence. A loud bang cut through the silence, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal scraping across concrete. Wolverine reached for his rifle, moving to the corner of the room, his back pressed against the cold wall. He crouched low, eyes scanning every dark corner of the bunker. Lyra kept working, her face pale but focused. "Give me a minute," she muttered under her breath. Wolverine's hand tightened around the rifle. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every second that passed brought them closer to an unknown danger, and a new kind of enemy. The last war on Kavros 9 had been brutal. The Terran Alliance had fought tooth and nail to push back the Kavrosi resistance. But there were always whispers about something more behind the scenes, something that had gone unnoticed, buried in the wreckage of war. Now it seemed those whispers were waking up. A sudden burst of static filled the room, followed by a distorted voice crackling through the intercom. It was a language Wolverine didn't recognize, harsh and clipped, almost robotic. Lyra froze, eyes wide. Damn it. They've activated the backup protocol. It's Zalreth. Wolverine's stomach dropped. The Zalreth were bad news, alien mercenaries who played both sides of the war. They were known for sowing chaos, manipulating both Terran and Kavrosi factions for their own gain. If they were involved, things had just gotten a whole lot worse. Backup protocol. Wolverine echoed, his eyes narrowing. What does that mean for us? They've locked down the entire bunker, Lyra said, her voice tight with frustration. And they've brought in the ghosts. Wolverine's blood ran cold. The Zalreth's ghosts were the stuff of nightmares, elite soldiers trained in stealth, mind control, and assassination. They could move through shadows, invisible, leaving no trace. Worse, they were ruthless. I'm not dying in this damn hole, Wolverine muttered, his jaw clenched. Lyra quickly tapped in a few commands, but the screen blinked red, refusing to accept her inputs. We need to find another way out. I've got a map, but it's locked behind security codes I can't crack without triggering the full system lockdown. Can't we just blast our way through? Wolverine suggested, fingers flexing on the rifle. The idea was appealing, straightforward, simple, messy, just the way he liked it. Lyra shook her head. That's exactly what they want. We trigger the alarm, they'll know exactly where we are. They're already hunting us. If we go loud, we won't make it out. Wolverine ground his teeth. He hated it. But she was right. No gunfight, no matter how brutal, would beat a team of Zalreth ghosts. The air in the room grew heavier as the hum of the bunker intensified. A shadow shifted across the wall, too fast to be human. Wolverine's eyes snapped to the movement, heart thudding in his chest. We don't have time for this, he growled, stepping toward Lyra. How long until you can get us out? Not long, she said, voice strained, her eyes flicking back to the control panel. I just need one more minute. Hold them off as long as you can. Wolverine nodded, moving toward the door, taking up position in the shadows. The ghosts were coming. And when they did, they'd be ready. For the first time since crashing, Wolverine felt a flicker of something new. Uncertainty, but there was no room for doubt now. Only one thing mattered. Survival. Wolverine pressed his back against the cold, metallic wall, breath steady and eyes sharp. The dim lighting of the bunker did little to ease the tension in his muscles, every nerve on high alert. He could feel it, the presence of something just out of reach, the faintest trace of movement in the shadows. The ghosts were close. He could almost hear their footsteps, though there was nothing but the pulse of the bunker and the sharp hiss of the ventilation system. Lyra's voice came low, strained. I'm almost there, Wolverine. Just. He didn't wait for her to finish. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Fast. Too fast for a normal human. He shifted, taking his rifle in both hands, bracing it against his shoulder. He wasn't sure if the ghost had seen him yet. He didn't care. He wasn't about to let it take him by surprise. The air grew heavier, colder, the shadows growing darker, thick as ink. Then, a whisper, barely audible. The sound of something brushing against the floor. Wolverine's instincts screamed. He pivoted, firing 3 quick shots in the direction of the noise. The rounds hit nothing but air. His heart skipped a beat. The ghosts were here, all right. But they didn't fight like regular soldiers. They didn't need to. They moved like phantoms, like the very darkness itself. Another rustle, this time closer. Wolverine's muscles coiled, ready for action. The sound was behind him. No, too slow. He whirled around just in time to see the blur of a figure, pale skin, sharp eyes, and the faintest flicker of a blade in its hand. He fired again. This time, the shot struck something solid. The ghost faltered, only for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. Wolverine lunged, moving faster than he had any right to. The ghost hissed, vanishing into the wall like smoke. It was gone. He didn't waste a second. The rifle's barrel was smoking from the discharge, but he dropped it without hesitation, grabbing a combat knife from his belt. If they wanted to play hide and seek, he was more than ready. He turned to look at Lyra. She was still working feverishly at the control panel, her fingers flying over the broken keys. The tension in her posture told him she could feel the weight of their situation too. "I need you to move faster," Wolverine barked, his voice low but urgent. "I'm trying." She snapped back, her eyes flicking up at him briefly, full of determination and a hint of fear. "The security codes are corrupted. I can't." A soft scrape of metal against concrete interrupted her, and both of them froze. The sound came from behind the panel, muffled but unmistakable. Wolverine's heart raced, but his hands remained steady. No time to panic. Another ghost appeared from the darkness. This one slower, more deliberate, its body shifting through the dim light with the eerie grace of a predator. It grinned at him, revealing sharp teeth like a trap waiting to snap shut. Wolverine's grip tightened on his knife. This one was different from the others. More confident. Maybe it had been watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Before he could react, the ghost lunged, its blade aimed straight for his chest. Wolverine sidestepped just in time, feeling the cold metal of the blade skim past his side. He countered with a sharp thrust, the tip of his knife catching the ghost in the ribs. It hissed in pain, vanishing just before Wolverine could deliver a killing blow. Damn, these things were fast. "Lyra," he growled, his voice strained. "I need you to move now." Lyra's fingers hovered over the panel for a split second, then slammed down on the keys with finality. The panel flashed a deep blue, and the air in the room hummed with the faint sound of machinery coming back online. "Yes," she muttered, mostly to herself. "I've got it. It's open." Wolverine didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed Lyra's arm and hauled her to her feet, his grip firm and urgent. "Move. Now." They sprinted down the narrow hallway, the sound of soft footfalls following them like shadows. The ghosts were close. Too close. Every twist and turn felt like a step closer to death. But Wolverine's heart pounded not just with fear, but with the thrill of the chase. He lived for moments like this. Moments when survival wasn't just an option, but a fight. A game with no rules but the ones you made yourself. He could hear them closing in, but he also knew that this chase was far from over. The metal hallway stretched out before them like a winding snake, the hum of machinery and the clatter of their footsteps the only sound. Wolverine kept his pace steady, pulling Lyra along with a forceful grip. His senses were on fire, every nerve in his body screaming at him to stay alert, to watch every corner, every shadow. The ghosts were still behind them. He could feel them there, just beyond his reach, silent, deadly, waiting for the right moment to strike. Lyra was breathing hard now, but her eyes were fixed ahead, her resolve as solid as the walls around them. She was no soldier, not like him. But in this place, in this nightmare, she had proven herself just as capable of surviving. "We're getting close," she muttered, glancing at the map she had on the datapad. Her fingers tapped rapidly, accessing the old systems again. The Vault of Shadows should be just ahead. Wolverine's brows furrowed. Vault of Shadows. Sounds like a trap. "Maybe," she said, not even bothering to look at him. "But it's our best shot." The vault was designed to protect the highest value assets on this station. If there's anything that can get us out, it's in there. His grip tightened on his knife as they neared a large, reinforced door. The Vault of Shadows. He didn't trust it, not for a second. But Lyra was right about one thing. It was their only option. The ghosts were closing in, and this was their last chance to get a foothold before they were overwhelmed. He reached out, his hand brushing over the cold metal surface of the door. "How do we open it?" "I've got the access codes," Lyra said, her voice strained. "But they're not exactly friendly." Wolverine didn't need to ask what she meant. He could already hear the clicking sounds of the ghosts drawing closer, the faint scrape of claws against steel. They were almost upon them. "Get us inside," he growled, voice low, tense. She nodded sharply, her fingers flying across the datapad. The door in front of them shifted, a deep rumble echoing through the hallway as the massive bolts holding it in place slowly withdrew. But just as the final lock disengaged, a chilling laugh echoed from the dark end of the corridor. Wolverine's muscles tensed. A figure stepped into the dim light. One of the Zalreth ghosts. This one was tall, its body covered in sleek, dark armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its eyes glowed faintly, a menacing yellow, and its grin was all sharp edges and malice. "Thought you could run," the ghost hissed, its voice coming in soft, measured tones, almost too calm for comfort. "You should know better than that." Wolverine didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, but the ghost was already moving, faster than anything human. It darted to the side, disappearing into the shadows like a wraith. But Wolverine had already anticipated the move. He spun, thrusting his knife into the dark, hearing the satisfying thunk as it met resistance. The ghost hissed in pain but didn't vanish. Instead, it pulled itself back, its form flickering, before reappearing just behind Wolverine. The ghost's hands shot out like lightning, aiming for his throat. He twisted to the side, barely avoiding the fatal blow, and slammed his elbow into the ghost's chest. It staggered back, momentarily thrown off balance. Wolverine didn't wait. He surged forward, striking again, this time with the force of everything he had left. The ghost snarled in fury, but it was too late. Wolverine's knife found its mark, cutting through the thin plating of the ghost's armor, and with a final scream, the creature crumbled into nothingness, disappearing into the air. Lyra, still panting from the run, took a step back, her wide eyes fixed on the empty space where the ghost had just stood. "Is it gone?" Wolverine didn't bother answering. He reached for the now unlocked vault door, swinging it open with a metallic screech. Without another word, he ushered Lyra inside, keeping a sharp lookout. The air in the vault was cooler, almost refreshing in its stark contrast to the suffocating tension of the hallway. Inside, the vault was vast, silent, dark, and filled with long-forgotten technology. Holographic displays flickered weakly in the dim light, showing schematics and blueprints for systems that had long since gone offline. Wolverine turned to Lyra. "We're in. Now, what?" Lyra scanned the room, her eyes wide as she took in the vast array of equipment. "We need to find the terminal, the one that controls the escape routes. If we can access it, we can get out of here." As she moved deeper into the vault, Wolverine kept a vigilant eye on the door. The ghosts weren't gone. Not yet. But he knew one thing. They were running out of time. And this vault, with all its secrets and shadows, might just be the key to surviving what was coming. The vault was cold, unnaturally so. The hum of machines, the flickering lights, and the scent of old metal filled the air. Wolverine stood at the entrance, his eyes darting back and forth, scanning the shadows, always alert. His muscles were still tight from the earlier fight, but there was no time to relax. Lyra was already moving deeper into the vault, her fingers tapping rapidly on a nearby console, her face set with determination. The faint glow of the terminal illuminated her as she worked. Every now and then, the low buzz of the tech echoed in the silence, but all Wolverine could hear was the pounding of his own heart. He knew they couldn't stay here for long. The ghosts were relentless, and with each passing second, they were getting closer. He could feel the shift in the air, the oppressive weight of their presence, like a storm on the horizon. Lyra glanced over her shoulder, eyes narrowed in concentration. "Just a little longer," she muttered, her voice strained. "The system's ancient. It's fighting me every step of the way." Wolverine's gaze never wavered. His senses were on full alert. The ghosts could move without a sound, blending into the very walls, becoming one with the shadows. He knew that one mistake, one slip-up, and they wouldn't just be trapped, they'd be dead. Another flicker of movement caught his eye. He spun around, knife in hand, but the hallway was empty, the door still wide open. He exhaled slowly, tension easing for just a moment, but not enough to let his guard down. They were getting too close. He could feel it in his bones. Lyra's fingers froze mid-air, her face paling as she glanced at the screen. "No," she whispered. "It's locked me out. I'm so close, but I can't break through." Wolverine didn't hesitate. He strode forward, his boots echoing in the empty space. "We don't have time. We need another way." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "I know, but this is our only shot. If I can get access to the secondary control panel, we can override the entire system. Otherwise, we're stuck here." Wolverine cursed under his breath. "Then let's move." The sound of movement in the hallway made his skin crawl, a soft scraping against the walls like claws digging into the metal. The ghosts were here. Wolverine's pulse quickened, but he forced his body to stay calm, focused. They were closing in, their presence heavy in the air, as if they were surrounding him. Lyra stumbled as she rushed to another console, her fingers flying over the interface. She gritted her teeth. "The panel's at the far end of the room. If I can reach it, I'll have full access, but we're exposed." "I'll cover you," Wolverine said, his voice steady. He didn't wait for her to protest. He knew what needed to be done. As she made her way toward the far end of the vault, Wolverine took position near the door, his knife ready. He kept his back to the wall, his gaze flicking between the shadows, watching, waiting. His every muscle was coiled, ready for the first sign of an attack. The seconds felt like hours. Then, just as Lyra reached the panel, the first ghost appeared. It emerged from the darkness like smoke, its armor blending seamlessly with the surroundings. The creature's eyes glowed faintly, its expression hidden behind a mask that seemed to shift with every movement. It hissed as it lunged at Lyra, but Wolverine was faster. He sprang into action, his knife flashing in the low light. The ghost blocked the strike with inhuman speed, its arm snapping up to catch his wrist. They grappled for a moment, locked in a deadly dance of strength and skill. Wolverine's knife slid across the ghost's armor, leaving a thin scratch. He cursed under his breath, but he didn't back down. He knew this would be a fight to the death. "Lyra," Wolverine barked, pushing the ghost back. "Get that panel online. Now." The ghost hissed, twisting out of Wolverine's grasp with a snarl. It didn't retreat. It circled him, its movements like liquid, graceful, and predatory. Lyra's voice came sharp from the other side of the room. "I've got it. I'm in. I'm overriding the system." Wolverine didn't wait for the confirmation. The second ghost appeared from the shadows, just as fast, its weapon drawn and gleaming in the dim light. He dove forward, slamming his shoulder into the first ghost, knocking it aside. In that instant, his knife found its mark, slipping past the ghost's defenses and into its chest. The creature let out a strangled hiss before disintegrating into the air, leaving only the faintest trace of its presence. But the second ghost was already upon him. Wolverine barely had time to react. The two of them collided, and the world around him became a blur of motion and sound. Then, a loud click echoed through the vault, and the room's lights blazed to full strength. "I've done it." Lyra's voice rang out, triumphant but breathless. The escape tunnel stretched ahead, a narrow, dimly lit shaft cutting through the heart of the station. Wolverine pushed forward, his breath coming in ragged bursts, his body still humming with adrenaline. Lyra was beside him, her footsteps quick but uneven, her face pale but determined. They'd made it out of the vault, but the ghosts weren't far behind. Their pursuit had only just begun. Wolverine glanced back down the tunnel, his senses straining to detect the faintest movement, the softest whisper of a footstep. The ghosts were relentless. No matter how fast they ran, no matter how far they went, they wouldn't stop until they were either dead or captured. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He could almost feel their presence, the shadows twisting around him like a living thing. "We're not out of the woods yet," Wolverine said, his voice low and gravelly. Lyra didn't need to ask what he meant. The fear was evident in her eyes, but she nodded, quickening her pace. "How far until we reach the extraction point?" "A few more levels down," Wolverine replied, glancing at the map on her datapad. "But it's going to be tight. We don't have much time before they catch up." Another sound, a faint rustle, echoed from behind them. Wolverine's heart skipped a beat. He didn't even hesitate this time. His hand shot out, grabbing Lyra's arm and yanking her into a side alcove, out of sight. His body went completely still, like a coiled spring, his eyes scanning the darkness, his every sense tuned to the slightest shift in the air. The footsteps grew louder, closer. He could hear the scrape of claws on the metal floor, the ghostly hiss of breath through the ventilation system. The shadows in the tunnel shifted, moving like living things, twisting and coiling around the walls. "Stay quiet," Wolverine murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra clutched the datapad tightly in her hands, holding her breath, as if afraid to make even the slightest sound. The seconds stretched into eternity. Then the ghost appeared, its glowing eyes flashing through the darkness, its armor slick and fluid like liquid night. It glided past them, its head tilting slightly as if sensing something was off. But it didn't stop. It passed by, fading into the shadows like the wraith it was. Wolverine waited, counting each passing second, until the footsteps faded away completely. He exhaled slowly, his grip loosening on Lyra's arm. "Close," he muttered. "Too close." They continued down the tunnel, but the silence was deafening now. The walls were thick, the hum of the station's systems louder than ever, but the weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Wolverine's mind raced. They were almost there, almost free. But then, the worst possible sound echoed from behind them, a shrill, unnatural scream. The ghosts were back, and this time they were angry. Wolverine's instincts kicked in. He pushed Lyra ahead of him, his hand on her back, urging her forward. "Run," he barked. "Now." Lyra didn't hesitate, her legs pumping harder as they both sprinted down the passage, the tunnel's sharp turns and narrow walls offering little cover. The sound of the ghosts' pursuit grew louder, faster. Their eerie wails filled the air, chilling to the bone. Wolverine kept pace, his senses still alert, his mind calculating every move. Then, just ahead, he saw it, the extraction point, a small circular door nestled into the base of the station. The airlock. It was their way out, their only chance of survival. But it wasn't just the door that caught his eye. It was the figure standing in front of it. A silhouette, tall and imposing, a figure in dark armor. A human. Maybe their last hope. "Lyra, keep moving," Wolverine growled, pushing her forward. He drew his knife, ready for whatever was about to come. As they neared the door, the figure stepped aside, revealing a narrow, shining corridor leading to a shuttle. Behind them, the ghosts were closing in. Wolverine could feel them getting closer. He had no idea how much longer they had, but they couldn't afford to waste time. Lyra reached the airlock first, but as she approached, the door didn't open. She froze. "Why isn't it working?" Her voice was frantic. Wolverine didn't wait. He grabbed her hand, pulling her aside, and forced himself to the control panel. His fingers flew over the keys, feeling the weight of every second that ticked away. Finally, the door hissed open. Without another word, Wolverine shoved Lyra inside, following her in a split second. The door slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang. A moment later, the engines roared to life, the shuttle lurching forward as it shot into the dark expanse of space. They were free. But as the stars streaked past, Wolverine couldn't shake the feeling that the ghosts would be waiting for them, out there, in the vastness of space, just beyond the edge of the unknown.